This is my model of phonetic knowledge. Phonetic knowledge is the knowledge of phonemes, which are the smallest sounds in language. In the English language, we have 26 letters, but we have many more sounds. For example, the letters TH together say th. So in this example, I'm using the phoneme A, and so I have an ant, an apple, and an alligator, and I printed out the dictionary's written pronunciation of each word here, and you can see that they all are pronounced with the same beginning phoneme. This is my model of morphemic knowledge, which is the knowledge of morphemes. Morphemes are the smallest components of words that still have meaning. So a word in itself is a morpheme, it has meaning, but so are suffixes, prefixes, past tense, pluralization. So in this example, I showed a doll using a big spatula. Big is a free morpheme, it's a word that stands on its own. And then I added some bound morphemes, some suffixes to the word. So that was the big spatula, but here is the bigger spatula. Then I showed the biggest spatula. And so by adding these bound morphemes, I was able to create comparison, create more meaning, get more specific with what I was talking about. So as children have developed more morphemic knowledge, they can understand better and be more specific in their language use. This is my model of syntactic knowledge. I had kind of a hard time coming up with a model to represent syntactic knowledge. I used a mismatched jigsaw puzzle. And as you can see, the pieces are put together incorrectly and the image, the result, just doesn't make sense. And so this represents syntactic knowledge because using syntax is the rules we have that govern how we need to order our sentences, the words in our sentences, our use of language in a way that makes sense to everybody. So if I took all the words of a sentence and I mixed them up and said them in the incorrect order, you probably wouldn't be able to understand me in any way. I need to put my words together in a specific way. And every language has this syntactic rules, syntax. And if you use words incorrectly, if you put them together in the wrong order, what you'll get is just something that doesn't really make sense. So with this jigsaw puzzle, I put some pieces together backwards, I forced pieces together, I stood some up in the wrong way, and the result is something that just doesn't make sense. So you need to understand syntax, you need to have some syntactic knowledge in order to be able to use language effectively. This is my model of semantic knowledge. Semantic knowledge is understanding that our language, both spoken and written, has meaning. So when someone speaks a word, children need to learn that that has meaning and what a word might represent. And it's fairly common for kids to overextend meanings of words. One example, obviously, was that a child might call other four-legged animals dogs. The other example that we read about, which I have shown here, is that a child might overextend the definition of a ball, perhaps to anything spherical. And I showed how an onion might get accepted in that definition because it's a sphere. I could probably try to throw it, but I know that an onion is not a ball. It's not something that we play with and throw and kick. And, you know, people can get into, even adults can get into semantic debates about what a word might really mean or not mean, or if someone uses a word incorrectly. So semantic knowledge is basically, it's understanding what a word represents, that it represents something and what it represents. And as kids develop more semantic knowledge, they are able to use the appropriate words to describe things. This is my model of pragmatic knowledge, which is essentially the practical use of language. We all need to learn at some point what's appropriate use of language in different situations. And we might use language differently in casual contexts versus formal contexts. And also, kids need to really learn how to take turns and how conversations work, where one person might talk and the next might respond, and you don't talk over each other. So my model here is kind of showing the idea of taking turns. These Lego figures are all crowding around the door trying to get in at the same time, which obviously is not very practical. So they would need to learn how to take turns getting inside to get through the door. And that's my model of learning how to appropriately use language.